Hey guys, this is Matt Lamarca from FantasyLabs and the Action Network. And today I am going to be going over the PGA models and how to sort of get the most out of them, what some of these different metrics mean. So right now I am in the CSU Ram 88 model. We have a few different pro models to choose from: Bales model, Cash model, Sports Geek model, and then Cash and Tournament model. Of course, you can select any of these pro models or you can build your own. If you want to sort of upload one, you can then play around with the sliders here to sort of build your own model. And each of these sliders is going to be represented by one of the columns here within the models themselves. So one thing you'll notice is we don't do like straight fantasy point projections for the golfers in our PGA models, which is a bit different than the other sports. It's very hard to predict on a week-to-week basis who's going to perform well with any sort of accuracy. So what we do is we give you these metrics so you can weight whatever you want to be focusing on in particular with their golfers. And one thing that I think is really cool is that every week Justin Bailey posts a article for whichever tournament is coming up, where he goes over sort of what metrics are the best for each particular course. So this week for the American Express, we've got these metrics grading out as the best. So you could theoretically even just build a model that weighs all of these things if you're looking to build a model specifically for a course. So let's get into the models here a little bit. Of course, as always, you can sort by name, you can sort by salary, and you can sort by rating. If you look at the expensive guys, different models will weigh them heavier or less heavy depending on, how much you're weighing stuff like Vegas odds to win the tournament and etc. So these implied points are just based on how expensive a guy is, how many points they need to score to return value on their salary. So Ricky Fowler, he's the most expensive golfer at 11,500. And he's going to need to score roughly 90 and a half DraftKings points to return value. And then as you get cheaper, the amount of DraftKings points you need to score obviously goes down. We do projected ownership for each of the players. So you can see in golf, there doesn't really get to be a ton of chalk, but we have a bunch of guys here projected for in the 13 to 16% range. Buzz score is something that we have incorporated into the PGA models. This is simply just how much buzz each player is getting throughout the internet. Right now, it looks like Sungjae Im is getting the most buzz. He has a buzz score of 10. So don't be surprised if he checks in as one of the highest owned golfers on the week. Sentiment rating is just how much of the buzz that they're receiving is positive. So, not all news is good news. It looks like the news for Im is mostly positive. That's why he has a 92% sentiment rating, but it can be lower if there are guys that, they're being talked about as, like fades or guys to not target. So that's another thing that you can sort of use if you're looking to target some contrarian golfers. Pro trends, we have this for all of our sports. It's simply the number of trends that each golfer fits that we have identified to historically provide fantasy value. So Scotty Scheffler here, or Scheffler, he's leading the field this week with 9 pro trends, and you can see he's meeting a bunch of different criteria. So you also have your trends that you can build your own using the trends tool, and then the tee time. Occasionally weather will be a factor in a golf tournament, and you'll want to target guys who are teeing off either very early in the day or late in the day. And this information here just allows you to sort by that if you so choose. All right, Vegas odds. This is very important in golf. Obviously, we have done some studies on this, and the greater odds you have of winning the tournament and finishing in the top 10, the greater your fantasy scoring is going to be. Your finishing position plays a pretty big role in golf, so obviously you want guys who are going to finish high up on the leaderboard. Adjusted round score is a proprietary metric that we have that basically just measures how good each golfer has been relative to par. And since this is in our long-term form section, it's going to be over the past 75 weeks. So if you sort by adjusted round score here, you can see that Ricky Fowler has been the best golfer. Not surprising, since he is the most expensive. And then, other high-priced golfers are checking in sort of at the top. Greens in regulation is, again, how often the player is making greens in regulation. Over the long term, 75 weeks, greens in regulation is important because you can't make birdies or eagles for the most part unless you're on the green in regulation. So you want guys who are going to be getting you opportunities to score because, in addition to finishing position, birdies and eagles and pars, those are the things that are going to give you your fantasy points in a given week. DD is a driving distance, so certain courses you'll want some guys that can bomb it. You can sort by that. DA is driving accuracy. If it's more of a precision course, you might want guys who are going to be hitting fairways. Putts per round, PPR. This is simply how many putts per round they've averaged over the past 75 weeks. A lower number is good, meaning that they are, a quality putter. They're making their putts. And a higher number means that they are not typically a strong putter. That doesn't mean you necessarily want to ignore these guys who are, poor putters, but are hitting the ball well. This guy right here stands out. He's on in regulation. He hits the ball a long way. He just hasn't made any putts. If he gets a hot putter for a week, he could be somebody who, has a better fantasy week than expected. Scrambling here is their ability to recover after, not being on the green in regulation. If they're in a sand trap, it just shows their ability to get up and down for par with chipping and pitching. Field percentage is the strength of field that the player has played in. Again, these are all long-term stats under long-term form. So if a golfer is playing in a lot of prestige events like Ricky Fowler, Jason Kokrak, his field score is going to be higher than somebody who is playing on, maybe some of the mini tours and is just getting a chance to play on the PGA this week. Eagle is going to be the number of eagles per round on average. Birdies is the number of birdies. Bogeys is the number of bogeys. Again, birdies and eagles are going to get you fantasy points, so they are important. You don't obviously want guys who are going to be bogey machines as well, because then they're not going to make the cut. They're not going to finish well, but you want guys that can make these scoring numbers in DFS, particularly in tournaments. The count is the number of tournaments that they've played over the past 75 weeks. So again, Sung J M has played the most. He's played 53 times. Missed cut percentage, pretty self-explanatory. How often they miss the cut in the tournaments that they've played. So you can see Im has been pretty good in terms of making the cut. There's other guys who are slightly better. But again, Im is playing, a huge volume of tournaments, so that matters. Par 3 is the adjusted strokes relative to par that they have gained on these types of holes. So we have that for par 3, par 4, and par 5. If you remember back to that course breakdown that I mentioned that Justin Bailey does, maybe this is a week where par 5 scoring is important. You might want to look at some guys who are really good on the par 5s. And then again, recent form. Now, this is all going to be over the past 6 weeks. It's going to be all the same metrics we just talked about, but the time frame is going to be different. So instead of being, long-term over 75 weeks, this is going to be just over 6 weeks. But again, we have a lot of the same metrics: adjusted round score, greens in regulation, driving distance, driving accuracy, putts per round, scrambling, field, eagle, birdie, bogey, and then again, the par 3, par 4, par 5 scoring. Form differential. This is an interesting one if you're looking to, buy low, sell high on guys. Greens in regulation differential. It's going to be the long-term greens in regulation minus the recent greens in regulation. So if a guy is historically somebody who hits a lot of greens, but they haven't been hitting them recently, they're going to show up as a positive number here. And again, if they vice versa situation, if they've hit a lot of greens recently, but they're not somebody who has done it in the long term, they're going to show up as a negative. And then the same thing is going to go for adjusted round score. You can also look at some course-specific stuff. This is going to be adjusted round score on this particular course, which for the American Express is going to be the PGA West Stadium. You can also see how many times they've played it and their missed cut percentage. We have some weather stats here as well. And then this is going to be the fantasy month and fantasy year scoring. Points per game is simply how many points they are earning per start over the past month. So Brennan Steele here, he's played 2 tournaments and he's averaged 113 DraftKings points per start. So that's obviously very, very good. Consistency rating, upside. This is going to be how often they're meeting value in terms of consistency and exceeding value in terms of upside. And then duds is how often they are failing to return value. We also have the monthly salary change filter. So if you want to see, Kevin Kisner is a guy who's been priced up quite a bit for this week, while we can go with somebody like Stuart Sink, for example, who has been priced down a bit over the past month. And then again, count is just the number of events they've played over the past month. And then again, we're going to have all those same stats that I just mentioned for the fantasy year as well. Points per game, average plus minus, which is simply actual fantasy scoring minus expected fantasy scoring. So a bigger number here is better. Consistency rating, upside, duds, count, and the salary change. And again, we have all of these models available for DraftKings, FanDuel, Fantasy Draft, and if you want to play the Showdown format as well. Right now, you can do round 1 or even late round 1 on DraftKings. And as the tournament progresses, you can do weekend and round 2, 3, 4, etc. All right, so that is going to do it for the golf models. Hopefully, this addressed any sort of questions you might have. And I hope you guys have fun. I think PGA is a really fun sport. There's a lot of variance, so it isn't a sport where you're necessarily going to be at a huge disadvantage if you're an amateur player against some of the pros. So hop in the models, experiment, build some lineups, and hopefully I will see you at the top of the leaderboards.